Okay, so I want to talk about my concern with everybody out there willingly purchasing this genetically modified garbage that they market to us as food. It's not food, man. It's to play with your genetics, it's to alter your DNA through nutrigenomics. The foods that you consume and the DNA that's within that food actually can alter your genes. It can turn enzymes on and turn enzymes off. Your DNA literally holds all of the information of every ancestor of yours from the beginning of time. So one of the things we got to do, family, it's essential, is to stop eating the DNA of these animals that have been tortured and treated like slaves, enslaved, consuming their DNA, and that's being uploaded into our system and altering our genetics.
The thing we realized is that all this information we're storing, it's about DNA, but the DNA we're storing information about is a digital storage medium. It's a sequence of, well, not zeros and ones like in your computers and smartphones, but a sequence of a discrete alphabet of 4 letters. And if we could manipulate some DNA, we could put a message in there ourselves, and we could use DNA to store it. DNA is a really good way of storing information. It's been used for hundreds of millions of years on life on Earth. Evolving has used that as its hard disk drive. Maybe we could use that. So we devised an experiment to see if this was a feasible way of archiving and storing information. One of the things we needed to do was decide what information to store and what kind of code to use. So we had to invent a code that would store information. We didn't just want to store information about genes and processes in a living body. We wanted to store any kind of digital information, just as your computer and your phone and your iPod can do. There's various problems we had to overcome. We can't make very long pieces of DNA as humans yet. So we had to invent a code that could make a message out of many short fragments of DNA. We had to devise a code that could store any information. We had to be aware of problems that would come and errors that might occur in the writing or the reading of that information, just like digital TV transmission or mobile phones have error correction in them. So we devised a code that would do that. We picked some bits of information to store, and we thought, what would be high value information you'd want to store a long time in a DNA format? Maybe the poem, the Sonnets of William Shakespeare, 154 sonnets, as a text file. We put, actually not the picture of Martin Luther King, but an excerpt from his I Have a Dream speech, which I hope So I want to emphasize not a transcript of what he said, the actual recording of what he said in an MP3 format, recorded into our DNA code, written into pieces of DNA.
He then goes to talk about how a petabyte of information can be stored in the size of your little finger. Now, a petabyte of information, he says, is enough information to fit in CDs if he covered the stage in CDs and it went up to his abdomen. Now that's a lot of information in just the size of your pinky.
And we encoded those and we had that made into DNA by the Agilent company in California. And it came in a test tube exactly like that one. It wasn't nearly full. In fact, when it arrived on I opened the box up and I held it up and I thought something had gone wrong because it was empty. And my more skilled molecular biology friends had to explain to me that tiny smudge of dry dust sticking to the bottom of the tube was the actual DNA, and it was a tiny, tiny speck. If the whole thing was full, we would have a petabyte of information in there, and that's hard to imagine what something the size of your finger with a petabyte of information is. So in other terms, I've just paced out the size of the stage, and by my calculations, if you laid out CD-ROMs all over the stage, you'd get about 1,000 of them on here. If you did that 1,000 deep, so it'd be up to about here somewhere, this whole stage this deep in CDs, right, that's a petabyte. So you can either have that much information stored in that format or something the size of your finger in DNA. So it's really compact. That's why earlier on I reminded you that DNA is very small.
Now imagine what these companies that are performing these genealogy tests are doing with that information. You know, that swab in your mouth, that's giving them a wealth of information. I don't even know what they could be doing with that. But it's not to provide you with your genealogical background. It's for their gain, whatever that may be.
We were asked, would it still be viable to larger amounts of data? And what we showed is that from our experiment, which is sort of on the left-hand side of the graph, over to all the information on any device on the entirety of planet Earth, we're still pretty efficient. That's what the 3 zettabytes data point represents. And we remain adequately efficient, even up to many, many orders of magnitude more information. So basically, it does scale up quite well. But if you want an easier image to take home with you, you could get all the information in the whole world encoded in a DNA format in the back of one, and for Americans in one SUV, and for the English in the back of one estate car. So you don't need many, many data centers all over the world. All that much information, in principle, would fit in one vehicle. Can we get the information back out? Well, we can do that. That's pretty efficient. That's what this revolution in DNA sequencing technology that's brought you the season ticket priced genome has brought. I have actually, the latest devices look like that. Actually, I have a slightly more up-to-date one here that can go around the room. This device could sequence, well, they're in beta testing at the moment, but within months, people will be able to sequence a whole genome in a day or so. I'm very happy for this to go around the room, but I do need it to come back to me at the end.
Keep in mind, this is the technology that they're willing to show to the public's eyes. Trust and believe that they are years and years in advance of the technology that they're showing you today.
One on the screen has a USB plug, which would plug straight into your computer, and they had to admit they couldn't actually design that, but it does come with a USB cable to plug it directly into your computer or maybe your smartphone. So I want to finish off with some ideas about why this is a good thing to do. And depending on your age, you will recognize or not recognize some of these, but what they illustrate is a whole bunch of digital media, or potentially digital media, that have been used. I have used every single one of these. If you've got any of these things lying around in your house or your office or in your garage or whatever, you won't be able to read them anymore. I'm pretty sure about that. Within a few years, these things become obsolete. And that's a problem if you're trying to do long-term archiving. I would argue that no one on the earth is currently long-term archiving digital information. Yet most information is now being created digitally. Currently, it's stored digitally, it's observed, looked at on your screen digitally, but we can't archive that information. Some things only exist in a digital form. Movie companies do things entirely digitally now. They shoot things digitally, they mix it all up digitally, they do different versions on the aeroplane or the 3D movie or the 2D version of the movie. Everything they show it in the movie cinema digitally. When they want to make an archive copy, then they make an analog celluloid copy because they know how to do it. That's not a good way to go. But if we go through any, how long will hard disks work? How long will memory sticks work for? How long will DNA work for? It works a very long time. How do we know that? We've done the experiment. We've looked at mammoth DNA that's 20,000 years old. Neanderthal DNA is 40,000 years old. The bison is 60,000. The current record is ancient horses. 700,000-year-old DNA sequences have been successfully read from samples found. That wasn't even a carefully done experiment. That was a dead horse that lay there somewhere cold. Information. If you want to do it yourself, your refrigerator is just perfect. And if you're really conservative, your freezer is just perfect. Will we have a technology to read it back? Well, we will, because it's DNA. As long as we have humans who are technologically advanced, we will be able to read DNA. We're changing the machine every year or two as the technology improves so much, but they can all do the same thing. They can all read DNA. As long as there are people, there will be DNA readers. The same is not true of a floppy disk drive or probably a USB memory.
And for real, this brings on a whole new, completely different meaning to the greatest wisdom is to know thyself. The greatest wisdom is to know thyself, family. You literally have all of the answers within you. All of the answers are already inside of you. Don't let these companies destroy your genetic code. I love you.